This podcast and any written materials related to it represent the opinions of Paula Atkinson and Lisa Kays, and our guests to the show and any written materials. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. It is for informational and educational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Welcome, everybody. We're going. This is What If Nothing's Wrong with You. I am Paula D. Atkinson.
And I am Lisa Kays.
And this is going to be a little bit of a darker episode. Just a little bit
going to the dark woods.
But I think it's important because Lisa and I were thinking, are we really going to do this episode? But I think we have to because we have alluded to it, I think, in every other episode.
Yeah.
Right? So we have alluded to the fact that modern psychotherapy is deeply rooted in white supremacist, colonial, patriarchal nonsense. And I think we need to air that out. I think we need to unpack that for the listeners such that going forward, when we just allude to that, you'll have more information about it. And Lisa has some horrifying, hysterical examples that I can't wait for her to share with you. But first, we're going to do a little bit of chit chat. So the first thing is that I watched the Indigo Girls documentary, It's Only Life After All. I watched it on an airplane.
Are you healed? You're healed, aren't you?
Well, you said it was so healing, and I was like, okay, sure, it's super healing. Oh my God. So I can't tell what my favorite part is, but first of all, if you think you love Amy and Emily, just wait. Just wait until you until you watch this and you watch them, their vulnerability, their beauty, their ability to admit to what I think, Lisa, you and I have done over the past 10 years, which is I was being a good white lady, right? Especially with the environmental stuff. Oh my God. So they talk about how they did like Farm Aid or one of those things in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was so like, everybody recycle and make
while we give you paper items at this as a handout at this thing.
Let me give you this paper booklet for you to read about how to better recycle. It's like, if you are not like liberal white woman who, then you will deeply resonate with these women. And then they met this woman, Winona, who is indigenous and who like brought them to the next. It's so beautiful. Their journey of it, and then we realized the intersection of murdering the earth and white supremacy and centering the white experience. And it was they did a great job.
They aired all their cringe, which is so, can you imagine being like, yes, just put it all out there. I will rewatch myself.
Right.
Or a documentary, be like, oh my God, I can't believe, do you remember when we did that? I mean, that is hard to do.
It is hard to do. And I think, yes, Lisa, and as you're saying that, I'm like, this is what all white people need to do. Mm-hmm. Is like, if you are willing to accept your cringe and accept your good white ladiness of the late 90s and early 2000s, perhaps we can move forward as a nation.
Yeah. I will model it. Next episode, I will bring some of my cringier white lady. Many. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I have 3 years worth. Just like, oh my God. That I still have new memories that I remember. And I'm like, oh no. Like, and I meet my Peace Corps friends and we're all like, did we? Oh, we did. Oh God.
Wow.
I think we could have like a white lady cringe off. And I think we could,
we could model so that we can all just own our like, oh my God, did I? I mean, my friends have brought me letters from the Peace Corps and I'm just like, oh God, I wrote that? That's, wow.
Yes. The ability to embrace your inner white cringeness is what heals us all. And Amy and Emily, are a great example of that. And they keep learning and they keep doing what they're doing. It's really beautiful. So if you haven't watched It's Only Life After All on Netflix, please watch it.
And then send us your cringe. We'll read your cringeworthy
Oh,
moments.
yeah. Please
if anyone else
read
wants to be cleansed. we'll just all have, for everyone we get, I will provide my own.
There you go. Oh, I have some. I mean, I went to rehab for anorexia. I have some deeply fat phobic white lady cringe that I can report for the group. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I love like sobriety cringe from when we worked in the rehab where I'm like, oh, I did that. Yeah. Oh, that was, oh my, I was real self-righteous about that too.
Oh, fully I mean, if it's a white cringe moment and it's not steeped in self-righteousness, is it even a white cringe moment? Yeah.
Great point. Great point.
So, okay, everybody watch that. And Amy and Emily will be our, they walk the path so that we can follow in their footsteps and we will all air our cringiest.
One thing I have to say, I wonder if the part in the documentary, I'm not going to give away the full context, but the woman who refused to be friends with Amy because they were lesbians.
Remember this part? Yes.
You think that woman is having some cringe? I mean, I'm like, at some point, did that woman become informed? And she's like, could have been friends with an indigo girl. What was I thinking? Right. You know, like, what?
Oh, totally.
That part, I was like,
who's that dumb woman?
I can't. I wonder if she will ever have. Probably not, given that level.
Probably not. She lives in Georgia.
Yeah, that level of like anger. But like, wow, what a cringe moment. If you perhaps got some awareness and looked back, that would be probably the worst.
That would be the worst if you had the opportunity to befriend Amy Ray and you
were like,
no thanks, because she's a lesbian.
Yeah,
the haircuts also amazing. It's also really cool to just see that. Like, I mean, I knew it all in my head, but just to watch like that they have just been doing this for 40 years and it was cool for like Rage Against the Machine to be political, but they can't be political because they're white lesbians. And it was just, and they've done it all themselves.
And it was great. I thought talking about looking back at the ways that they know that they got kind of robbed. Like we probably could have been bigger. We could have been, and like, because we were in this, and I think them talking about that, like being mad at it, being aware of like, I just thought that was so powerful to be like, and like, you know, Amy owning like, I probably had some moments of like, you know, acting, and like she was sick of being told like, you know, you can't act, and she's like, well, are the male rockers able to act like this? Because come on, I just thought that was so refreshing. It provided me with like this context of myself and how we react to these things. I didn't know a lot of it because I didn't, you know me, I never know anything about pop culture. I didn't know their like story.
Yeah.
I was into it.
Oh, and Emily talking about her alcoholism and her sobriety and then becoming a mom after she got sober. I love it.
And I have to say, as an add-on, since we just did the sobriety episode, there is Glennon Doyle. What is her podcast? I can't remember, the, you know, Untamed, whatever, that lady. But she has an interview with them and they go deep into the alcoholism stuff. And it was a very powerful
I listened to that
interview. Episode. We Can Do Hard Things. Is it called We Can Do Hard Things?
I think so. It's her and her wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Very good. So just another recommendation for that. And then you saw Bruce Springsteen on purpose?
I saw Bruce Springsteen. I was stunned. It was a gift. My husband, our anniversary, my husband one night 11 was like, my brother and sister-in-law want to send us to Springsteen. And I was like, I'm real tired. I want to go to bed. And I guess that seems like something you should do before Bruce Springsteen. I don't know. And he played no song. There were like 3 songs that he and I knew. I mean, his musical whatever is extensive.
He has a very large canon.
So I didn't know what was going on. I also, he does a great show, and his band, did you know, you probably did, it has a lot of people in it. Like a lot.
E Street.
I thought it was going to be like a saxophonist and a drummer.
I have no idea, but this is one, I don't know if we can even categorize it as pop, but this is not one pop culture thing that I have. You are going to know more than me about.
His band has like 20 people in it, and it's like women. It's people. It's so diverse. It's like women. It's people of color. I think he's married to one of them. But I was like, this is which evidently everyone knows, but I was like, well, that makes sense really given his brand. But it was lovely. They're like astounding musicians. They were just having fun. I don't know. It was fun to just see people be like totally in love with what they were doing for fun. And I felt like he was really there to be like, I just like to hear these guys play. Like, and the band, it also, now that actually this is going to relate to what we're talking about. I hadn't thought about this, but they'd clearly, some of those guys have been there 50 years. And then some of them were obviously new that they'd had to. And I was thinking about like that integration process and like how that goes in therapist communities, which we're going to incorporate, like the old guard, the new guard. And like, it seemed to be fine. I mean, it was a show, but I just was like, that was kind of beautiful that they all seemed to be appreciating each other, loving each other. Awesome. The vibe of it was, it was delightful. It was delightful. Great vibe. Didn't know hardly any songs. That's fine.
I don't know any. I am like, so not Springsteen, Jersey.
One album. There's like one album that we know.
Born in the USA.
Well, no, it's actually it's already gone. There's one. It's not Born in the USA. It's a different Born to Run. You probably know. I was like, he's probably just gonna do Born to Run. Isn't that what we're all about? Like that album, and I'll know all those songs. And then no, he did not care. He also does not do Born in the USA.
Well, thank God, because that song is terrible.
I was like, is he mad at? And he's evidently mad because nobody gets it, because it's not about patriotism. It's quite
it is,
and no one gets that. And so I think he just doesn't. He's like, I'm not doing it anymore because nobody's smart enough to like get the lyrics. So
nobody knows.
I kept being like, well, we can't leave yet. He hasn't done Born in the USA. And David was finally like, the lights are on. I think it's everyone's leaving. It's like, it can't be.
Amazing. It was over. Okay, great. We had to leave. Amazing. I wanted to report that the CMA Awards, which stands for Crystal Meth Anonymous, but that's not what we're talking about now. It is actually the Country Music Awards. The nominations were announced, and as a shocker to no one, that that sense of, I always say this, that the Germans must have a word for being shocked and not shocked at the same time. That is the feeling I have when I realized that Beyonce was not nominated for any country music awards, not one, 0 of them, despite having a #1 song on the country music charts for several weeks because of Cowboy Carter, which is one of the most incredible albums ever made by a human. 0 country music awards nominations.
None?
0.
What was the #1 song? They're all so good. I don't know. What was the one that was the #1?
I don't actually know if it was, I bet it was the Miley Cyrus run.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good one. None?
0.
Is the CMA all white people?
Yeah.
It's all white people.
Yes.
Who felt fine about...
Maybe Hootie. Maybe Hootie is in there.
Right. I think Hootie.
Well, we know Miley and
sure
Dolly.
He got nominated.
Miley and Dolly voted for her. We know that.
For her. Yes. Sure. And probably
Willie Nelson.
Yeah. And Shabuzi, but he's brand new, and now we all know of him because of the Beyonce album.
Right.
Yeah. But Hootie's literally the only black, and there's a few other black artists, but they've never gotten nominations either.
I really thought we were going to get our moment of her singing American Requiem at the CMAs. I explained to David, I was like, she wrote this song because.
Right.
Seriously?
Right. Well, and even Carlo, who is not he's not a Beyonce fan like I am. He was like, I cannot wait for Beyonce to sweep the CMAs. We have never watched the CMAs.
No, ever. I was going to watch it. I don't even know. I mean, when is it on? I don't know. Are you serious? They're not even going to let her in the door.
Of course not.
Because they know she's going to humiliate their...
Yes.
They all going to be standing up because it's... Wow.
Right. And then they have to stand up and clap. The same people who 10 years ago when she was on stage with the Chicks got up and left because she was singing one of her songs with the Dixie Chicks, now called the Chicks. Those same people would have to stand up and clap for her when she won an award. So they're not going to let that happen.
Because they can't handle their cringe moment. And this is why we can't have nice things like healthcare.
Exactly. Because white people cannot absorb their cringe. It's true. It's true. It all comes back to that. It's true.
I am dismayed.
I mean, it's shocking and it's not shocking.
I'm
you know
shocked,
what I mean?
I'm dismayed, and I'm like, well, of course.
Well, of course. What did we expect from these people? Yep. And there's the guy who did get the most nominations. I don't know who he is. You know, I'm sure he's not the one. He's not the white guy, Morgan Whalen, who was taped saying the N-word in downtown Nashville, but he's like he's basically is. I know that I'm saying terrible things like they're all the same, and they're not. But that person has a CMA award and Beyonce does not.
Has she said anything, or is she like doing the whole like I'm not even?
Beyonce does not care.
She's not.
She has better.
Like, I have a $1 $1,000,000 a day.
Yeah, and I just started my own whiskey company named after my grandfather, who's on the album, who made whiskey during So I think she's doing just well.
She should just buy the South.
She should just buy it. That's a great idea.
I own it now. Now I am a country musician. I bought it. Her and Dolly should go in.
Just and buy Tennessee.
Buy the South.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad idea.
The voting laws.
Yes.
Could be a great public good. Who do I write? Who should I write?
From Texas to Tennessee.
Dolly Parton. Idea.
Can you have Beyonce just buy it? That's a great idea, actually. I mean, she does own Texas, in my mind.
So what do you guys think of when the Grammy nominations come?
Mm-hmm.
Is she going to be nominated? Is she actually going to win?
Didn't they come out? Isn't that the ones David is stressed about? Is that not the Grammys?
No, he's probably stressed about the VMAs. The VMAs are
VMAs. Yeah.
Because she's nominated for that.
Yeah,
I'm sure she is. Yeah,
I was thinking
there's
those
a couple
are the
albums. There's a couple categories where there is no male identifying artists even nominated. Yes. As it should be.
Grammys cannot diss her. They cannot. Can they?
They have for decades.
Right.
They have for decades.
They nominate her, but they don't choose. I mean, I feel like there's no way to even not choose her. I almost feel like Taylor Swift would have to be like, you know what? No thanks. Like, can we?
She never does, though.
Mm-hmm.
Adele is the only one who's been like, I should not be winning. Beyonce made the Lemonade album this year. What is happening? Why do I have a Grammy in my hand?
Right.
The Lemonade
Adele
album
said that?
Yes.
I love that. Good. Because I kept thinking, isn't Taylor going to do that at some freaking point? She should. Be like, I'm not even standing up to take it. Just, this is stupid. Wow.
Yes. No, Adele's the only one who said, like, I don't understand why I won right now.
Because if you consider, I was really thinking about this because, my son is stressed out. If you consider like innovation and originality and like, there's
artistry?
No competition between this album and the other ones. Like Taylor's, I mean, it got me through The Death of My Father. I'm not going to lie. It's got some. And it's all like the same song. I mean, it's not innovative. It's not interesting. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dua Lipa, I like Dua Lipa. That's but Beyonce is like innovating.
If you think of Rick Rubin defines talent as the ability to take an idea and manifest it. Beyonce is talent. Like that is right. Like, like a huge, big concept. And we are going to create it on this level of existence with all of us, mere humans. That's what she does. And it's just it's just an indication that all of these awards, Oscars, all of it is just white people high-fiving white people. It's just rich white people patting each other on the back.
Much like what we're going to explore about our profession.
Exactly.
I'm just like a transition machine today.
You are. Just
we don't plan these, anybody. We don't plan this. This is organic.
Turns out everything's about racism. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot today about bystanders and about and Lisa specifically is going to talk about the concept of bystanding. And we're about to go real dark right now. But the story that has come out of France, there is a woman, Giselle Pellicot, although I'm sure I'm not saying it like the French do.
Giselle
Pellicot, probably. She is 72 years old. She has found out that her husband of many decades has been drugging her, raping her, and allowing men in the town to pay money to come and rape her while she is drugged and unconscious for decades.
What?
Okay.
Do you have questions?
She was drugged each time, like
yes.
in Bill Cosby-like fashion.
Correct. Exactly like
Bill Cosby. She has had
no
awareness.
Yes. Yep. So,
and in a small town, a large town, a medium
small town. So neighbors, people she saw in the grocery store, people she saw in the library, men she saw in the library would come over and rape her while she was unconscious because her husband had drugged her.
How did she find? I am like ill.
Yeah,
it is ill. Horrified. Like you sent me a meme thing, and I was like, okay, I kind of have the gist. This sounds bad. This is way worse than I thought it was going to be.
So she found out that over 80 men over the course of a decade has said that she was sacrificed to the altar of their vice. This is all in quotations. She said the police saved her life when they investigated her husband. They investigated his computer, and they found over 20,000 images and films of his wife being raped over 100 times by men in her town. He would advertise it, and then they would come over. And a lot of the men, and was a trial going on, thank God. First of all, the judge told her to stop calling it rape, that she should refer to it as sex acts. Is that what it was? And she was like, oh no, I think I'll just go ahead and keep calling it rape. I'm good. I don't think I need to be corrected by you, the person who was not raped 80 times by men that then I had to go to the grocery store with. I'm good. I'm good on the languaging though. Thank you. Thanks.
Did she have a lawyer? Why is she saying this?
Well, I mean, she said that when she was on the
stand.
On the stand. Yeah.
Wait, who tipped off the police? How was he advertising this? Where was he advertising it such that it could go on for decades in a small town and the police didn't catch on, I don't know, scooch sooner?
A scooch sooner. You would think. Actually, one of the people who went to participate in it was a police officer in the town.
I was just going to say, we know that has.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
One? I mean, okay.
One. And then she finds out that she has sexually transmitted infections that she's had for years because she's never gotten it tested, because why would she get tested if she only has sex with her husband? It is horrifying.
Where are the town's women? Do you know?
Yeah. The wives were at home. Yeah.
Where was this being advertised? Was anyone suspicious? Did anyone?
I don't know, like where it was happening, where he was advertising. Who knows what kind of, I mean, the internet, if you want to get into dark places of the internet, you can get into dark places of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we think no women knew at all.
No. People were taught. Men were taught to park like a block away from the house. I mean, it happened in her bed, in her house.
And there was no one of these men in a small town. This is not, I mean, not that it would be okay in a city, but this is not New York City. This is not Paris. This is not everyone is anonymous and there's there's going to be sex criminals by ratio. We're talking about a small town where 80, did you say 80 men?
At least 80 men.
All thought this is fine.
Uh-huh.
And many that more men saw I don't know where it was advertised. I'm assuming more than 80 men. And they all went, that's fine.
Well, it was advertised, and a lot of the men who took the stand said they thought that this was like a sex thing that this couple was into, and that she was participating in it consensually. Correct.
And they didn't feel like, perhaps I'll ask to arrive when she's conscious so I can check.
Or I'll ask her at the grocery store.
Oh, that's right. After I saw, hey, how was that for you? Did you enjoy that?
Right.
Oh
See you next week. Nothing. So this is a dark story. She's great. Her husband's going to prison forever, by the way. So that hopefully she will be fine. Our thoughts and prayers.
And no one protected her. No cop. No one had a protective instinct over her.
And this is what we're going to talk about today when we talk about what happens when there is bullying, when there is abuse, when there is like bad things are happening. And we think that we have been taught that it is safe to stay quiet. It is safe to be a bystander. It's okay to just allow things to keep happening.
Well, because we are taught to value above all else this sort of civility, this like white civility, that this whole idea of like, we have to like, forgiving and forgetting, or like if you're somebody's voting for Trump and they want to decimate the lives of like trans people and immigrants, like even if that affects you, like, just why let politics get in the way?
Exactly.
Like this idea of like politics, as if politics is not a personal thing. That the supreme force of whiteness is like, be nice, be friends. I mean, there's a whole thing about Taylor Swift and this Trumper that she's befriended.
Brittany Mahomes.
And that was where I became, somebody was talking about like, this is such an example of saying like white civility is the supreme thing, as opposed to like, I don't know, maybe Taylor Swift should have a principled stance about like, you're voting for a literal racist who hates women, who is harming people. Like, I don't want to be associated with that, but she's not. And God bless, because she's, we can see past politics. But like, is that good? That has never made sense to me.
Right.
It's hard to overcome when you're constantly being told like you're a bad person if you are like, I don't want to hang out with people.
No,
whose values are like are that far off.
Yes.
It's like you're the closed-minded, problematic person, which is white culture in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, that we
blame
should be behaving
victim.
Well, and also that we should be really interested in, specifically for white women, that our priority is always how other people feel about us, how other people feel in our midst, how other people's experience of us is always more important than our experience of being alive. Always. So we always have to be so concerned about how other people feel.
That's why I was asking about the women in that town, because I have a hard time believing that somebody didn't start to notice something.
Yeah.
And probably started talking. Oh, you know what? Do we really want to cast aspersions?
None of our business.
Or gaslit, or like, or even one of the men who saw the ad could have been like, hey, Joe, I don't know. This seemed, oh, well, are we really going to accuse Bob of like something nefarious? Joe, that's how it turns into this bystander thing where people get like profoundly harmed while we're all being polite.
Yes.
And it's not good.
Yeah. No, it's not good. And so let's talk about that in terms of therapy and psychotherapy and all of it. So I'm going to give a little background. And I know we did this a little bit on the first episode in terms of why psychotherapy can be harmful, in the sense of it is modeled after Western medical health, which is that there is one thing wrong with you. It can be diagnosed and we can fix that thing, right? That in and of itself is very colonial, very white, and not true when it comes to your brain. Your brain's a little bit more nuanced than that, it turns out. And so let's talk a little bit more about when I'm saying all this, I know that everybody listening to this is way more nuanced and can understand this already, but let's just make it clear that like the things that we're talking about, the list of characteristics that are white supremacy culture that show up in organizations, that show up everywhere in our culture. This is not because white people are bad. In fact, whiteness doesn't even exist. It's all made up. It's all a concept. The concept of whiteness. That's why I love when Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about people who think they're white. He doesn't say white people. He says people who think they're white, which I love because it's such a good reminder that whiteness is a concept, that the hierarchy of humans is a concept, and it is bad for everybody. Just like toxic masculinity harms men, fat phobia harms thin people, white supremacy culture harms everybody. It harms people of color the most, but it harms white people because people in France aren't listening when some lady is getting raped by their husband a million times. These are all the things that harm all of us. So if we think about psychotherapy in its beginnings, it's so new. This idea that you can talk yourself into being mentally well is a very, very new concept. And it was invented 150 years ago. So, and let's remember that Joseph Breuer and Sigmund Freud, these are like the fathers of psychotherapy. They came up with like this talking cure, right? This is at the height of so much colonialism going on in the world. Let's think about the fact that Carl Rogers, who took it only in 1942, like the concept of psychoanalysis that Freud had come up with, 1942, that's not even 100 years ago. And his whole thing was that it is client-centered counseling, right? So the individual can have whatever they want. If the individual works hard enough on themselves, they can be sane. I just want to note that in conjunction with fat phobia, which is everybody can and should be thin as long as they work hard enough, right? Everyone can be healthy as long as they work hard enough. This is the same shit is in psychotherapy as everybody can be sane. Also, asterisk, our definition of sane is a white, straight, rich male brain.
Obedient
brain. Yes, exactly. That's what sanity is. And anybody can have it if they work hard enough individually by themselves, all alone. So this is where all of this comes from. So when we're saying white supremacy and psychotherapy are the same thing in so many ways. We're not saying because white people are bad. We're saying because all of the concepts that are white supremacist culture are psychotherapy culture.
And we are also finding, I mean, this I didn't know, and it's like people are now laying out all the ways that the theories that we learned in graduate school were all stolen. That we were learned as white Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He stole it from an indigenous community, and then he put a little bow on it. And so it's the co-optation of the knowledge. It is like, and that I can now own this. And it's like all of these theories go back to something that someone else understood quite well and figured out. And it's like what we've learned isn't even like real. I mean, it's like that completely
real,
changes.
But it was capitalized by white men
because he edited the hierarchy to make it fit into. I mean, it's like nuts.
Into colonialism and capitalism. Yes. Yeah. So the first time I ever heard this was in your workshop, Lisa, but I want to go over some of the characteristics that are white supremacy culture. Again, not because white people are inherently bad, but because white supremacist culture is bad for all people. So first of all is the perfectionism, right? Perfectionism is this need to keep working on oneself. We talk about this so much. Like we're trying so hard not to use the word work and not to make work synonymous with worth and not to participate in the delusion that a good person is constantly working on themselves to be better, right? So perfectionism is part of white supremacy, right? That there's always a better state to be achieved if we just work hard. That's so much of psychotherapy, right? That's what we've talked about in so many episodes about like, no, I think I'm done. And the therapist being like, no, you have more to work on. Yes.
It's puritanical, evangelical, like you can be cleansed.
Right. And you can get into heaven if you work hard enough. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The second one is worship of the written word, which is the exact same thing as worship of the intellect, right? So these are that there's a wrong way and a right way. This is very similar, as you might notice, to a missionary or a colonist who goes into a culture that are doing just fine, but the missionary or the colonist has to go in and say, oh, look at these, these poor brown people. We can raise them up. We can help them. By the way, we're going to rape all of the women and steal all of their resources, but we're really going to help them become better, more superior people by getting them to get into their intellect and think more rather than feel more, which you may have heard us say already, does not make anybody sane and has never made anybody sane ever, ever, ever. Thinking ruins everything. Another tenet of it is progress is bigger, more, right? Again, work is synonymous with worth. So this is how we determine success. A successful person is somebody who has, it's so interesting, right? That like, colonialism is that we will conquer nature and we will capitalize on it and we will burn it to the ground. And white supremacy internally is that we will conquer ourselves, that we will pillage and rape ourselves until we are the most perfect version of ourselves. And this is how diet culture has us work with our bodies, right? That our body is wrong in its natural state and it can be improved upon if we work hard enough, right? The either or thinking, good or bad, right? So this is the binary. I say 1,000 times a day, binaries are always a lie. That's all of white supremacy culture. Quantity over quality, right? So little or no value attached to process. Also, if it can't be measured, it has no value. That is white supremacy culture. That is colonialism, right? Unless it can be measured with
evidence-based therapy.
Practice.
Can't just make you feel better. I have to see data.
Yes.
I can't trust your experience of it. I've got to see data. I can't be a therapist that's just like, this seems to be helping people. No. Has there been a study?
What's the data?
If not, it's not real. Okay.
Which is the worship of the intellect, which is the worship of the written word, which is the worship of numbers, which is what eating disorders thrive on, is all the numbers, as if you can count calories or count weight or all this bullshit that your body doesn't give a shit about. Your body doesn't know any numbers. Your experience doesn't know any numbers. And then most importantly is the individualism. So individualism is colonialism, is capitalism, is white supremacy culture. So little experience or comfort working as part of a team. People believe they are responsible for solving problems alone, right? So the entire thing of psychotherapy is I can have it all. I can be as self-actualized as possible, alone, by myself, without any regard to the environment around me, without any regard to capitalism, oppression.
Right. Well, it's hard if I have it all.
Exactly. Who's in my way? Individualism is, you can't have psychotherapy without a worship of individualism. Does that all make sense?
And that is the work, just so we're not, of Tima Okun, who has, there is a website devoted to it.
Yes.
It is brilliant. And so
Kenneth
helpful.
Jones and Tima Okun, White Supremacy Culture from Dismantling Racism. Please go to all of that. Yeah. And so, let's think about like what makes individualism and egoism so appealing is it does literally sell us the mythos that we can have liberty and freedom no matter what, that we are not responsible for anybody else, that we can do whatever we want, that no matter what, I can have whatever I want, right? That is colonialism, because white people or people who think they're white, who have decided that they are superior because they really like their thoughts, decide they can go anywhere in the world and just take over. And it's all, and I'm not saying that psychotherapy is bad or wrong. We just want to recognize that this is where it all comes from, so that, the only way, like the Indigo Girls, the only way we can recognize the harm that we're doing is if we recognize where we come from and we recognize where our thoughts and where the basis of our thinking comes from. And so that's what we're doing here, is to recognize, like, this is where psychotherapy comes from. That doesn't make it bad inherently. It just makes it that we have to pay attention to that.
And it makes it the reason that I think we wanted to talk about this, because we've known about the racism in the therapy organizations and there for
Yes.
quite some time,
Yes.
in various ways. But, and you know, we didn't want to do it as like, oh, we're going to spill the tea. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's more about like, if you start then acting or thinking or saying things in your therapy, or as a therapist, you start questioning these things in therapy organizations, you become a problem.
You become the
You are
pariah.
a problem because you are questioning a container. And we know as
Mhm.
therapists how important the container is. But when you start questioning the container, it can get weaponized again. Oh, well, you're not like well. I mean, I have been literally called unwell for having anti-racist thoughts, or, you know, what is this about with you? Like, it can get pathologized. Like, it becomes like you're cuckoo. And I don't mean that in like, I'm trying to be, but like, that is the framing. And so you have to be very cautious. And that's why, like, if that is starting to happen in your therapy where you're starting to be like, I would like to be more liberated around XYZ ideas, or I am starting to question all of this individualism. I'm thinking that maybe I do have an obligation to my parents or to my community. That if that is getting questioned, you may not have a liberatory anti-oppressive. You might have a therapist who's real. I mean, and there are some therapists that are deeply invested. Like, I used to think, the way I've explained it is, I used to think after, you know, when Trump was elected and we all had our moment as white women and we were like, oh my God, racism is still here. One of our moments. It was a cringy moment for all of us.
I couldn't believe Obama didn't solve it. God damn it. Yeah.
But I thought even then, in my naivete, we all are at little r racist. We don't know about it. We don't see it. But we all want to not be racist, right? Whereas capital R racist or overt racist, like the KKK, the people that are like, I am like deeply invested in the white supremacy.
White supremacy.
And I thought, none of those people are people I know. And then we walked into these therapy organizations, many of them. I am not speaking about one, to be clear. You're not going to know who I'm talking about or what, because I've had to figure out how to distill this out.
Right.
And we were met with the reality of, oh, yeah, this is big R, deeply invested. And that was disturbing to come to understand. And that's why we want to talk about this, is because people who will seem inclusive, anti-racist, will behave in profoundly, overtly racist ways,
probably
not in front of their patients, when they think they are protected. And they think they're in an all safe, all white space. Let me tell you, the education one can have behind white closed doors. And it was deeply alarming.
Dark. Yes. Because it's so covert, right? And just much like thin worship, it's so covert, right? That even when, and I've had this experience in therapy communities where I say, you please don't say fat phobic shit around me. And people know that fat phobia is just racism, same tune, different lyrics. It's all the same shit. And they have chosen to defend their right to say fat phobic shit. And it's like, oh, you are. And I think it's to avoid their own cringe. I think it's to avoid their own pain, their own grief, their own reckoning, which is fine. It's also, you know, you can continue to do that. But I want our listeners to know that, like, if you have experiences where you're like,
it's not you.
It's not you. You are not crazy. Turns out there's nothing wrong with you. And your feelings are valid. If somebody is born in a cage, freedom is seen as an illness, right? So, like, right. And so, like, the cage that therapy was created in is white supremacy. And so anti-racism, or being like, hey guys, this is not working, this seems a little oppressive, blah, 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 that can seem as insanity, right? And I've said on here before, being sane in an insane culture is not a compliment. No, thank you.
And I similarly, my thing was doing the anti-racist work. And literally having it. I mean, I literally had my therapist saying, I think this is about your mother. I was literally like, could we please not have 300 white people booing at me for asking that we not scream at a Black woman for trying to tell us about her experience? And that being like, what are you really up to? Like, that is the level of the protection.
Yes.
Of this system and my cringe moment is I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I am. It took me years to be like, hold on. But like, you can have that stuff subtly, like really and these good instincts that you have to like try to be helpful, equitable are being eroded.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to talk about this. Because if that's happening to you, you're not possibly the problem.
There's nothing wrong with you.
It's wild.
It is wild. Yeah. There's more you wanted to share, right?
So to give you some examples of the wild.
Yay.
We were trying to figure out how to talk about this without just being like, this is the stuff I've seen. I found an article that talks about that basically is a reporter realizing what one of these organizations looked like.
Oh yeah.
In a racial political brouhaha. And so I've taken some of the quotes that to me are like, oh, I've seen that acted out 5 or 6 times in 5 or 6 different organizations, like over and over.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of my favorite ones, and let me see what Paula is. So the reporter writes, almost everyone I interviewed, all the therapists, despaired at their profession's inability to cope with the kind of conflict that mental health professionals are charged with alleviating. The saga feels like a surrender to the kind of rhetoric and brokenness that's represented all around us in the world that we're supposedly trying to help people fix. Does that resonate with you, Paula?
That should be on a plaque somewhere. That is so beautifully said.
My husband, who's like not at a therapy, he's always like, he can't believe the things that go on at our professional conferences. Like these aren't like coffees you're having with people. This is in professional spaces, sexual misconduct, like horrible, gross enactments around like racisms. Like basically misogyny. I'm entitled to have access to you. I'm entitled to be racist to you. I mean, I have seen
because I'm just feeling my feelings.
Yes. Yeah, and literally, and these skills, the lack of skills, the things that people, the way that I'm like, you are in a professional space and this is what you're saying, like in front of your colleagues, there's no skill.
It's
and he's like, you guys are the ones help. What? He's always like, huh? Like what? Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Well, and also even if I know you have more examples and I can't wait to hear them, but like the amount of times I have been around other therapists and I will say like, oh, well, that's just white supremacist nonsense. And they're like, right. Like they gets up and I'm like, have you heard of white supremacy? Like, it's okay. Right. And it's like this, how are you? I mean, I know how many therapists are. And this is hashtag not all therapists. There are so many incredible liberation-based, incredible therapists out there, but there are a lot who like, won't talk about it, won't talk about capitalism, won't talk about white supremacy, won't talk about misogyny. And it's like, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they keep going to like, well, what happened with your mother? And it's like, bitch, this is not about my mother.
Or hold on. I have a quote for this.
Oh, yeah.
Because the other way, because what started happening, so we go into these organizations in like 2016, all of us young, and we're like, oh, we have to stop being racist. We're going to show you how we're racist. We're all going to read right fragility, and we're all going to, and another cringe moment possibly, but that's whatever. We're doing our best.
We're doing our best.
And so and then it hits like 2018, 2019. It's like, we've done the workshops. We've done the education.
Totally.
And it's like, now, we're realizing like, wait, there are people willingly, some have come along, but there are people willingly not learning it. And then it occurs to us like, oh, they don't want, because you can't at this point not know if you've been in a therapy, you have been trained. Like there's no way to not know unless you don't want to know. Yep. And one of the things that I was told, which is reflected in this comment, is I was told once when I tried to say something about a discussion I heard in a bathroom that was very anti-trans, and I went to the and I was like, hey, not loving this. I'm sure I didn't say it perfectly, but whatever.
Sure.
I was told, I resent you because I feel like you're trying to teach us something. We were at an educational conference.
Was that said by a male or a female?
It was said by a female.
Interesting.
An elder, very invested in the, the old guard,
Sure.
as
The
this
old
article
guard.
also notices happens in every organization. We got an old
Every
guard.
organization.
We got a
Yes.
new guard. And I felt shame about that. Oh, I did it wrong. I'm too lectury. I shouldn't be trying to teach people. I was literally just like, people are committing suicide at horrific rates. Like, could we not? And the important thing about that, which also happened to anyone who tried to say anything, was a tone policing. You did it wrong. And then once I came out of my fugue of like, oh, it's me, was like, we resent learning something?
Yes.
That's alarming.
It is alarming, especially again with the people who are trying to help us all navigate being alive in the year of our Lord 2024. If they resent having to learn something, that is scary.
Yeah. And here's the quote from the article. So he was irritated at the other side for lobbying accusations of racism that left very little room for disagreement. To use that as your tactic doesn't really promote the kind of conversation that psychoanalysis is known for, which is a self-aware, introspective mulling over. I'm very reluctant to have us make our re-entry to the world stage as this kind of virulent political action committee. So what I hear in that is, you better not come to me sure that I have been racist. You better not come to me with any sense of like, hey, I see this differently. And you better come to me like, I've been thinking, I'm having some feelings, but what I'd like to know is what happened to you at age 5 that made you say that? And I want to have a 5-hour, I just want to say to you, that was racist. I didn't like it. Stop. But we can't, because what they come back with is, where is this about you? I'm like, it's not about me. I didn't say the racist thing.
Which is gaslighting, which is the definition of gaslighting. So if you feel gaslit in a therapeutic, I'm putting that in quotes for those of you not watching, environment, you are being gaslit in a therapeutic environment.
All of which, by the way, are tactics. I'm going to use this guy's words, tactics of narcissistic abuse. All of this, by the way, if you want an interpersonal lens, on to just read Dr. Ramani's book. Go into any therapy organization. You can be like, oh, I'm taking some notes. Look, I saw that one. You can have a bingo card.
Yes.
One of my other favorite quotes from this was a professional listserv I was participating in. This was somebody who I thought was a colleague and a friend until I believe I tried to bring up that maybe we shouldn't make women who were victims of being sexually perpetrated upon, what is that, sexual harassment, who had concerns about that. Maybe they shouldn't have to sit down with the always older white man with an established huge following in the organization, tons more power. Maybe we shouldn't have to sit down one-on-one and talk to them myself to get it resolved. That yielded a fuck off, Lisa. From a colleague who then, of course, back to Dr. Ramani's book, addressed me like 3 weeks later as if nothing had happened.
That is the thing that is, talk about gaslighting and talk about a narcissistic parent, right? Like when you go in, and I like that we are the young people in the organizations, but we are. And then you go in and then you yell at you in a group, and it's all for this, like we're being therapeutic and we're just talking about how we feel. And then they're like super nice to you. And then and then a lot of people in the organization get wasted together. It's so weird. It's all so weird, you guys. Therapists,
and it's all of them. We are not talking about just one. It is like, I know one that's kind of an exception that I'll still go to, but like, it's wild. And it's sad because you're like, I am trying to learn something. I would like a professional place to go get a bunch of CEUs at once, see some, and it's like, profoundly, I mean, I stopped going. I left all these organizations because
Right.
I was like,
As you can tell, Lisa and I don't go to these anymore.
this isn't like reformable. This is
No.
wild. I mean, there were some changes made in but anyway. This is one of my favorite examples of weaponizing. Let me see how much of this I want to read. The generational division. So it's always brought up. It is never a problem of race, sexism. It is never that. It is always you new people are coming in and you are
young
disrespecting
whippersnappers.
The old people. That is always what the argument is about, so that it can never be about what we're actually talking about, which is we have a lot of racist structures set up in this organization.
And sexist and anti-trans and
not transparent leadership gets like, oh, how do we choose your leadership? Oh, when I'm done, I tell my friend to do it. Oh, well, how does that, what? Like, that is not how it, what? Anyway, cool. That generational division between a new guard that sees resistance to reform as born of structural and often unconscious bigotry, and an old guard fighting what it sees as a radical activist vanguard. There's a way in which this generational argument is made as an escape hatch and a rallying cry. If you say to people in a profession that feels it's dying, that new folks are trying to come in and dismantle everything, it activates annihilation anxiety.
Yes.
And my translation is that of like, you can't say it in a non-whitewashed way.
Totally.
That makes us actually look at it. Like,
yeah,
well, so there's no way left to say anything, because here's the diagnosis. Paranoid and schizoid mentalities have gripped this profession, he said, with a cadre of authoritarians exploiting the vacuum to castrate the leaderships of psychological organizations.
Ew, shut up with your Freudian dead white guy nonsense. Oh my God.
But when that happened, that's what they throw at you when you're like, hey, could we put like some newer anti-racist people in charge? You're trying to castrate. We have to look at your castration fantasy. I'm like, I have literally never once thought about cutting off anyone's penis. I would just like this organization to be run by some people who have some ideas about transparency. Like,
it is, and again, the whole, like, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. If you have a hammer, everybody who comes in wants to castrate you. Like, bro, I don't care about your dick. I just want you to get out of the way and let a younger person of color say something every once in a while.
So anyway, this is what it's like to do when people say therapists weaponize mental health.
Yes.
This is what it is like when organizations start having racial conversations. Now, I am not convinced that if you actually started having a racial conversation at any organization in America, so I guess we could give it to the therapists that they're entertaining the idea. They're very proud of themselves about that. But like, so at this point, I'm like, we're almost 10 years in and there's no skill still, which is to me an unwillingness to have skills and to actually listen and do anything but this. And this is like character. I read this. I was like, oh my God, I feel so validated. I've seen this so many times. And I don't know anything about this organization. I've never been. I don't know what this is. I don't know it.
Right.
I felt like I'd been there. I was like, I've been to that meeting.
I feel like everybody listening has been to that meeting. You know what I mean? In one way or another has been to that meeting where one person says like, hey, that was misogynistic or whatever. And then, everybody gets, everybody is so devoted to the current cult that they're in, whatever it is, right? Whether it's diet culture or whatever, I mean, it's all the same thing. And so
we're in the cult of castration, evidently.
Oh, I mean, I'll sign up. Where do you sign up? That's fine. So we have pulled back the curtain for y'all. And not to say that everybody should get out of therapy, but I want us all to know that like the solution cannot come from the same place as the problem. And the solution as psychotherapy as the solution to your internal landscape, remember where and from whom it comes from. It comes from dead white men. And so there are lots of therapists, there are lots of mental health professionals who are moving past that, who are doing incredible things. And so seek them out, because what's probably causing all of your issues is everything that was invented by dead white men. Those things invented by dead white men are not going to help. Probably not going to
No.
make you feel better.
And the words you want to look for are that are going to like point you in the right direction, because we did this episode because I became aware of liberation psychology or liberation focused therapists, like anyone with liberation and who can actually back it up with any like train, but when I do the consult, I'd ask anti-oppressive, anti-racist, and because this came about because I had an experience where I learned the extent of the suppression, which I wouldn't have believed. If someone told me, I'd be like, this can't be right. And I'm seeing other people facing it, like on Instagram, it's happening to other people.
Yes.
People don't want therapists to know. It is very hard to get good training in liberation psychology.
Yes.
I tried to hold a workshop. It was actively suppressed by leaders in therapy in our community who don't. So it's like these therapists are often like quieter. They're, and when you do a consult, you may want to ask about these words and then really listen for the answer. And if your nervous system feels like you are being sold,
listen to your body.
I read this and this is what I'm supposed to say, because there's an awful lot of those. Or if your nervous system feels like, okay, this is somebody who will own their cringe. They will sit in there. That is what you want. Somebody who's like, they will sit in their cringe. They can tolerate mine. We can all be like, we do not have to be perfect here, because that is the opposite of liberation. Like,
exactly.
When people ask me about my anti-racist work, I'm like, let me tell you about all the mistakes I've made. Haven't figured this out yet. It's looked very bad.
Yes. But that's what you want. You want somebody who's able to say, like, I do, it's messy and I fuck around and find out all the time and I do the best I can. But this is the soup that we're all swimming in. Yeah. And there are those of us who are devoted to being aware of the soup. And one thing I say is, like, of course I'm a dumb white lady, but I'm also not invested in my whiteness, right? No. And that's the difference, is you want somebody who, like, most therapists are white. So if you can find one
that's
a
great way to ask the question. How are you invested are you in your whiteness? I'm serious, because I'd be like, not at all. I'm like really waiting for someone to tell me what else I can be. Like when you said that, you're like, oh, so-and-so said nobody's white. I was like, thank God. So that's the kind of response. And some people's brains will blip out and they'll be like, well, how dare you? What kind of we're done. Okay, start your therapist.
Right.
Like,
well, and
great question.
When it comes to, like, food and body and weight stuff, right? Like, so many clients come to me after their therapist told them to intermittent fast or whatever. And so to be clear about how the therapist you're going to see, how they feel about diet culture, ask them how they feel about fat phobia. See what happens. See if they crawl out of their skin when you ask them about their feelings around diet culture or thin idealism. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See if they even know those words.
Yeah. Please do.
And or if not, how, and it's not like a quiz. I mean, not everybody, that doesn't mean, but like also how do they respond to not knowing? Do they say,
right,
I don't know those words, but I'll look into it. Okay.
Great. Right. Humility.
Can say they don't know. We're on the right track.
Humility is the willingness to be teachable. So if you can find somebody who's willing to be teachable, and it's also not your job to teach anybody. If you're also like, I don't have time to teach this bitch, great. Yeah. That's fine too.
But you don't want the person who says, I resent you because I feel like you're trying
to teach me something.
That's not the vibe we're going for.
No. Is that it?
I mean, there's more, but I think that's all for today.
I think
how much racism can we deal with?
Right. How much racism and 72-year-old woman being raped by her husband can we talk about? Let's talk about some iTunes reviews. I wanted to read a new review that we just got. Please, if you leave us an iTunes review, we will read it. This one is from William, who says, came for the innovative take on mental health, stayed for the Beyonce/Taylor Swift/Dolly Parton pop culture triangle of love. He says, you should subscribe to this podcast because they bring the funny without forgetting the love. William,
nice.
We didn't even pay anyone for that. That's real.
I honestly don't know who that is, and I love it so much. Thank you. That's not one of my close friends. Thank you, William. That was really great. If you leave us an iTunes review, we will read it. We are also always open to questions, concerns. If you feel lost, alone, or afraid, please let us know. And if there's things that you want us to talk about, if there are things you've always wanted to ask a therapist about, racism, or how crazy are they? The answer is very. We'd be happy to answer those things.
And remember, we are offering a 1-for-1 match on any cringe moment that
Cringe.
you wish to share related to racism or in general.
Or just
Fashion
white people cringe. Yes.
White people cringe. We're
Sure.
open to all flavors, and we will match you head for head.
We will match. That is true. Yeah.
Maybe
let's start
Nameka
that.
will even get in on it. We don't know.
Does Nameka have any cringe? I doubt it. He's perfect. It's almost his birthday. It's Nameka's birthday a week from today, everybody.
Hey.
Thank you.
So please subscribe to us and leave us some iTunes reviews. And you can follow me at Paula D. Atkinson. You can follow Lisa at the Lisa Kays. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.